Well, listen, I'm impressed having all of you to listen to and learn about all this data stuff. Um, my perspective is a little bit different. In the article that I wrote last week was something that I sort of wanted to write for a long time. So if you guys will indulge me for, what do you think, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, Paul, how long?
Sure, go for it. 10 minutes
Yeah.
would be great.
And this is in an article called The Big Reset, and I'm sure you're all going through this exact process in your own minds and your own families and your own companies. And the essential situation we're in is, as you all know, we've had 11 years of economic growth. The longest upcycle I can remember in my career. I don't know that the economy's grown for 11 years very many times in the past, maybe once or twice, but certainly not during our lifetime. And we were fraying at the edges. The issues of income inequality, work-related stress, productivity, the huge number of vendors and technology startups, people are stressed out about their time, and boom, here comes this virus. So, and to some degree, as much as I don't feel good about anything that's happened, and we are all worried about our health, and people my age are significant, I'm in my 60s, so I certainly don't want to catch this. None of us want to catch it, although I have a lot of friends who've had it. It is, in a sense, a reset for us. So let me just briefly take you through the 5 things that I think are being reset. The first is, of course, the way we work. And, working at home is a big deal. For some of us, we've done it for a long time. I've done it for 20 years. But for a lot of people, it's new, different, not well understood. I was on the phone with Goldman Sachs this week. They're freaked out about it. They don't know what to do. Is it productive? Is it unproductive? Bank of America doesn't have policies for it. All these companies in India now who are doing outsourced work for banks and insurance companies and other, regulatory compliance programs now have to send that data home to unsecure locations in India. How do you work together as a team when you don't see each other every day? What happens when your kids come in the room because they're home from school and they're busy and you got to take care of them? These are things we didn't really prepare for. So everybody's dealing with that. And one way to think about it, the way I think about it, is a little bit of the bigger picture is this is the final stage of the digital transformation. It's the people part. We transformed the products and we transformed the services and we transformed the infrastructure, but we didn't really transform the way the humans work very well. And you can see that in the productivity data. So now we're going to get focused on that. And so the human connections and the norms and the behaviors and the way we measure people and the way we evaluate people when we're really, really in a very virtual, sort of hybrid world is going to be a big deal. And I don't know that we're going to go back. We will go back to the office, but this is going to, you guys know this, Zoom is now worth more than all the airlines combined. That's how big this is. So that's number one. And we're launching a thing next week in our academy called the Remote Work Boot Camp that's all about this with some cool stories. And so if any of you guys want to, dig into that topic, that's number one. Number 2 for me is budgets. Most of you are probably in companies where you're going to have a downturn. Now, if you work for CVS or Amazon or, certain industries are growing, but I would guess 70 to 80% of the industries are not. Today, you saw over 3 million people filed for unemployment this week. So we're going to end up with some budget cuts. And in the companies I've been talking to the last week, a lot of these projects they're working on in HR are still happening. But in the middle of that, there's this sort of theme of, wait a minute, maybe we can't afford to do that. Maybe we should put that off. Maybe that project is just not the highest priority right now. And so we've got all these issues there. The reset to me, in other words, the positive of that is, frankly, most of us work in big companies that are too bureaucratic. We have too many things going on already. After 11 years of growth, we've piled on and piled on and piled on, and bureaucracy and complexity has become a problem. And I've had a lot of conversations with companies about this. Yesterday, I talked to a company in Silicon Valley, a very well-known company. And he said, you know, it's like barnacles. We've got barnacles all over the company, and these barnacles are slowing down the ship. And we got to peel off these barnacles. So in terms of, you know, what we do in HR, design thinking, what I call zero-based budgeting, start from scratch, you know, throw away the things that aren't working and start over. It's okay. Nobody will miss them. That's the Marie Kondo idea. So I think that's number 2. Number 3, of course, is leadership, and this is being tested every day. And I was just watching Nancy Pelosi this morning. You know, we're actually getting a chance to observe different styles of leadership. Andrew Cuomo is an incredible human being at this point in time. So is, you know, the governor of California, Gavin Newsom. We get to watch Trump in real time and experience that, what that's like. You know, we get to see Nancy Pelosi. But what I think is coming out of this, in this particular point in time, and this is going to be true for a while, is empathy and compassion. Because, you know, for me, being, you know, in my 60s, yeah, I know we need the big stimulus and we need the economy and people need unemployment. But if they don't feel safe going to work, if they don't feel safe going into the office, if they don't feel safe coming into the hospital, no amount of money is going to fix that. So we've got to be really good at listening. You guys, you analytics gurus, you know, sensing, NLP, all that technology to pick up what's going on, the conversations going on are really going to be important. I'm going to do a project on that with MIT. We're going to launch it next week. We're going to do a big thing to crowdsource a bunch of that data. So that's number 3, is compassionate leadership. And for everybody at all levels, you know, individual project managers all the way up to the CEO. The 4th one, you know, I wrote about is trust. And I won't spend a lot of time on this because this is a bigger topic, but you know, I did a lot of work on this at Deloitte, and you know, trust is a very complex thing, and people don't know why they do or don't trust various companies. But I do think it comes down to 3 things right now. The first is having an ethical framework of really giving people what we call voice to values, letting people speak up at work about the ethical issues that they're worried about and bringing them forward in an open way. That's, you know, the folks at Boeing were not able to do that because there were people at Boeing that knew there were problems in the planes, but they didn't speak up. They didn't feel comfortable speaking up. So that's number 1. Number 2 is competence. At this particular point in time, you know, if something doesn't work, if it fails, if the product fails, if the initiative fails, people don't have a lot of tolerance for that. And so, you know, I think part of building trust is doing things correctly. And that means maybe slowing down a little bit to make sure we're not just throwing stuff out there, you know, that people can't use, because we're all stressed with time right now and we can't afford things that don't work. And the 3rd part of trust is voice and listening, which is where you guys fit in, really listening to people, including customers, including shareholders, including stakeholders. And so you can read about it, my comments on that in the article. And then the last thing, and that's a reset too, because I don't think we're going to go back. I think this need for trust is going to be with us. We don't trust the political system right now. We don't trust the media right now. And if you want to read about trust, the resource I recommend is the Edelman Trust Barometer, which is a fascinating data study of trust. Another piece of data that you guys will love is the World Happiness Report came out this week. That is a fascinating compendium of data. It's really hard to read, but you guys will understand it a lot better than I will. But take a look at that. That'll teach you a lot about, you know, what's going on. The last thing is just on HR really quick. You know, the reason I started the Academy was I really do believe that we are in a hugely transformational time of HR, not just upskilling, but cross-skilling, becoming a full stack professional, learning all the domains and connecting them all together, working in an agile way, becoming data-driven, learning how to tell stories. We're doing all this work with Visier on that. And I think right now what you're going to find is that the appetite for HR transformation is probably bigger than you think. I've actually had a lot of companies call me and say, look, we're in the middle of the crisis and we have a response team, we're doing this, but by the way, you know, our HR function is not operating fast enough. and how can we operate in a faster way. So there is a reinvention of HR that is happening in real time as a result of this. And I think, this profession that we're all a part of is going to become a heroic profession and really, really central to the recovery. And so for those of us, a lot of you are working for big companies, some of you are analysts, I think we have to support ourselves and each other through this. And we're going to come out of this not only with a seat at the table, but we're going to be there. I mean, we are instrumental and central to this. So that to me is number 5. So those 5 things to me are things that are going to be long lasting out of this and maybe give you a little bit of perspective to see through where we're going to be for the next year or two.
Josh,
so, Paul, hopefully that wasn't too long, but I'll stop there.
Josh, that's great. Thank you so much. Two things. Number one, if anyone did not see the Economist article about everybody, including my family, sent it to me yesterday. And that is about the rise of HR and the importance of the chief HR officer in this environment. But I do, before we go to the panel, I do want to ask you and anybody else just a quick question. Your comments on trust and empathy.
Yeah.
Every HR, every town hall, it's early days, but people are asking the question, are there going to be layoffs? People do remember 2008, 2009. It's a little bit different, but
yeah.
Our muscle memory does remember that. What's your advice to the HR function as it prepares to go through this once again?
Well, companies are different. So, like the pharma companies are not laying people off. So there are some companies that are not going through layoffs, but the ones that are, go back and read everything that was written in 2008. The painful price of layoffs will hurt you over the long term. There's lots of studies. I posted a link to a great HBR article on this, but there's a survivor syndrome of those who remain. The research shows that those who remain tend to lose almost 20% of their productivity after a layoff. So you have to do it in a thoughtful way. Obviously, right now, take care of the people that you have to let go. If you can give them a pay cut, if you can give them a furlough, you will be better off. This may be over in a year or 6 to 9 months, and you may be hiring again. And the funny thing about layoffs, you can lay people off really fast, but it takes a long time to hire them back. So if you look at the story of Circuit City or Nokia or other companies that went through massive layoffs, they all didn't survive the next cycle. So you have to be thoughtful about that. And then there's, of course, just the obvious stuff that HR people think about all the time is the communications, the benefits that are provided. And then the big decision where you guys get involved is, where should we let people go? And what are the data options? Should we reduce spending in these areas? Should we reduce hours in these areas? Should we let people go in this function versus that function? You guys are able to give the business people those kinds of insights that they may not have, and they're going to try to make a decision very fast. So I think doing a really good job of workforce analysis right now will really, really help make these decisions as rational as they can possibly be. So that's a quick answer to that.
Gosh, that's great. And I think the only thing I'll add to that is this is also the time to reinvent work. If there's anything I learned about, coming out of 2008, 2009, if all you did was cut heads and expect a smaller amount of people to handle the same scope of work and didn't change how work gets done, you won't recover well, and you actually wasted your time. If you're going to cut, make it meaningful and do something that leads to better sustainability of the workforce after.
Yeah, the theme that I use is doing less with less, not doing more with less, and not doing the same with less. You have to cut the stuff as you're going to cut the people.
And don't forget how to grow.